Okay, good morning, Naomi. We're going to do your teacher reflection on your observation that I did on Tuesday, 15th. And we focused a little bit on building background, but we're also focusing on comprehensible input.
Right.
So let's go through some of these questions that are here in the teacher reflection part of the lesson plan template and see what you thought. So the first question was, how was my delivery of the objective-driven lesson I planned?
I feel like it depends on the student to answer this question.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them definitely were able to pick up main ideas or what they thought main ideas were with hashtag summaries. We did not get to expanding them into their own sentences. That was sort of yesterday and today.
Mm-hmm.
They're working on trying to make them into a paragraph, which is a newer piece there. And reading the article we did as we finished the modeling and we got back into Newsella. But as your notes pointed out, and as I probably know but choose to ignore most days, there are a couple of students that I'm not reaching, and I don't know if that's a reflection of me, because I think I took that personally once I read your notes, or if that's a reflection of the student that day. And so that's a concern because we can't have that happen repeatedly day after day. So I've been trying to focus on those kids the rest of this week.
And we can go through the chart here just a little bit as to what specific students you are thinking of, and maybe I can recall what I saw, with them, okay?
And I'll say, too, that one of them is having a behavior plan with a case manager and
Absolutely.
And a parent today. So.
And that particular student obviously had issues from something that they brought in from previous, and so I think at that point it was best just to keep him
And what I found out
silent.
this morning was apparently the girlfriend broke up with him on Monday, but then they talked about getting back together on Tuesday or Wednesday, so that was happening and he didn't tell me.
So he just shut down, and he shut down even before he came in.
Right.
I think just the way he entered. So
Yep.
yeah, but we can talk about maybe if there was
The other ones.
Yeah, the ones that maybe forgot their supplies and
And I'm trying to not
What do
make
you-
it punitive and just offer another option.
Right.
Okay, that's great. Well, here's some more books. Why don't
Yes.
you choose one of these?
Yes.
Why don't we try this tonight?
Yeah. So, okay. What changes would you make, and what are your next steps?
Well, based on your notes and thinking about the lesson and pacing and how it's going this week, I tried to do more of a covert, overt direction check, talk and turn with the partner to make sure everybody understands, because the students did not ask any questions when I said, do you have any questions? That was yesterday. It's on the board again today. I'm wondering if I need to grab someone's Chromebook and model that on the document camera, only because from my side, if I log in with my credentials, it's the teacher portal, it's not the student side. But I also wonder if some of that's just that we're 4 days before break and that some kids just, hey, I'm going to Mexico, or hey, I'm transferring a semester, who cares? So that's also at play. To me, it feels like the more explicit I am with pacing or directions, like, hey, I really wanted to have summaries to grade tonight. This was yesterday. I didn't get anything from them. I was like, oh, this is funny. Let's make her mad, or let's just not turn it in. And I don't think that was true for all of them. I think that was true for one or two in each period.
So you're finding, what I'm hearing you saying is that they're still not getting much written on that paper.
Or that we're stuck trying to get to the article from last week, or I don't want to reread, so I can't do the work because then I don't know what to write because I have to reread and I don't want to do that.
And it's hard.
And I want to go take the quiz, I just want to click buttons and be done. And it's like, no, there's no right answer. There's no, I'm going to tell you what to do. And I think for some of them, that's just a real challenge right now.
Yeah. Okay, so did I hear you say that you might check with the partner? How would that look?
So yesterday I did that. I went through it very explicitly. Like, I wrote out every painstaking step. I color-coded websites with assignment names. I talked about it. I said, please turn to a partner. I looked at the clock about 60, 80, 90 seconds. I said, I want you to converse. What are you doing? Check that you both get it, and then get it and get started. And that kind of worked depending on the student and their partner. And for the ones that didn't want to work, they put their head down, they didn't do anything. And that's where I thought about, do I give them a post-it note and ask them to write down the explicit steps from the agenda? And I decided that's a time waste because then I'm going to fight, I don't have a pencil, I'm going to tear up a post-it, I write really slowly. How do I spell this? So I went with the oral check, and like I said, that kind of worked but didn't work, and that's why I'm thinking today maybe I need to go visual. And that's why I say grab that Chromebook, stick it on the document camera, and say step 1, click here. Step 2, click here and click here. Step 3, maybe split your screen.
Is there a possibility that there's 2 different groups in that classroom, that ones who need that explicit and some that could continue working on their summary that are actually doing that?
Yeah.
Then you wouldn't slow them down with their work?
Right, and so what I might do at 15-minute free read today, because Brad mentioned this last week, if they get to do free reading as a non-freshman in homeroom, do I really want to double up and do 15 minutes in instructional time? And I said yes, but I think that maybe what I need to consider is they tend to pick fiction, and they don't pick nonfiction. And this is still nonfiction, so it'd be perfect to say in 15-minute free read, you have to read on Newsella.
Yeah.
You can read the assigned articles, or you can go free choice.
Sure.
And that would give me that wiggle room time to check in with each kid or say, hey, I noticed yesterday you struggled to get things open. Can we review what you need to do?
And I know that silent reading is silent reading, but could you use that 15 minutes to conference with some students that are struggling with that and go through a step with him?
That's what
of
I just
writing
said I
summary?
might try today.
Okay. I didn't hear that saying you were
Yeah.
going to do it during that time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was also thinking about whole class because I'm not sure exactly how many. Like Ben
I
Lopez,
think that would be worthwhile.
Ben Lopez was absent the day we first did it. So it's like, well, I'm catching up someone who wasn't even here, like, who also tends to make a scene out of things.
Yeah. I think that would be really valuable. I used to do individual conferencing with my students over their lab projects, and I felt like they listened more than they did reading a feedback. When I would write on the rubric specific things that they just didn't listen. They didn't take time to read it and digest it.
Mhm.
But when I could actually talk with them, point to it,
Right.
and show them maybe an example of what it should look like on a sample, then it seemed like it clicked better. And I felt like it helped me build those relationships with those students that sometimes were somewhat resistant on wanting to do quality work. But when they're all reading different articles, you can't even go through it step by step really with each article, you
Right.
know. So
And that's something I thought about, like, should I have only done one for everybody cookie cutter? Because that would be easier to manage and easier to build back on and pick up vocabulary. But then I thought there is power in giving motivated choice.
So what I hear you saying is that you're still struggling or trying to figure out by monitor and adjusting. Okay, you had the I do, we do, and now it's the you do.
right,
And you're trying to figure out, are all students ready for the you do?
right. And I'm almost wondering if there's a smaller group that I need to say, hey, let's go do a second article that counts for one of your two together.
Mm-hmm. And do it together as a group. They might be. You know, as I sit in a math class, it's very obvious to me when I'm ready to be released to do that work on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, it's 30 years ago that I had some of this algebra or
Right.
calculus. And so when I look at it, I'm thinking, I can feel how the students feel. Because I'm sitting there going, okay, I think I got this. I think I have this. And then all of a sudden, then the teacher says, okay, now let's do it on your own. And so I'm sitting back there trying to do it on my own.
Right.
Like, oh, you know, I thought I really had this, but now I'm on to do my own, and I'm still messing up with that one step.
Right,
Maybe there's where some of the students are.
right,
So when they say, yeah, they don't have any questions, it's because they think they have it.
right,
And then they read it, and they're like, ugh, I still don't know what to write.
right. And it's part of the reason why I'm giving them the extra time. I know Wednesday was a short class period. So I was a little frustrated and disappointed to go home and not have my evening where I knew I had an hour to be able to grade or look through things to do that.
I know.
Tonight I don't. I have a concert at church. Like it's just scheduling
many
doesn't
things.
work out that way. I wouldn't say too many things, but if they all turn them in today, I'll be like, well, that's nice. But Friday's already booked, and then I'm out Monday, and you have a quiz on Monday on the same skill with the sub, and then it's Tuesday at break. Like that was the day in the evening,
And that's where that flexibility is just, it's a hard piece sometimes because we have to
and so I
adjust
can
it.
work around it. Like I can try to figure out if kids turn them in today, how to read them in the middle of the afternoon, or I don't know if during Bridget's 10-minute free reading time in her period, they don't need me to help doing 10 minutes of subject technology once the teacher's here.
When they were working with a partner, were they actually reading something that they wrote, or were they trying to verbalize what they read and summarizing it and telling?
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Just to clarify directions.
Okay.
I chose not to take your advice there because I really feel like there's several that use it as a crutch that I will always get the chance to check up with someone and do an oral work. And what we saw this morning again is when we assess on reading,
Yes.
independent, solo, take away all those supports, they struggle. And it's because we don't make them struggle. And so part of me wants to say, I know this is hard, but this is a safe place. This is an easier text. You've got to make some choices. Let's work through that struggle. Otherwise, it's sort of like someone who tries to go play the football game who didn't attend practice. And I don't want them to have that experience.
But is it still practice by verbalizing to somebody else the summary of your article?
Absolutely.
So it's
So that's
still
why
practice.
I'd rather go do that with them individually, one in
Okay.
the room, and work with each student. Because if I know you're an IEP or I know that's your learning style, I want to provide that modification. Because when it comes to an assessment, if that's in your IEP, it's a teacher that's going to have that modification, not a peer student.
You know, we talked about the one student that was really, what's his name?
Chad, CJ.
No, the student that we had to talk about after the class about his
Oh, Keytune.
Keytune.
Yep. He was one of the ones that got something turned in yesterday, so this is what he gave me.
And I find it very interesting because he was really dialed in to what you were saying and talking about. And then when you this is what I was going to share with you about your background, building background. I mentioned here that I thought that when you presented your story about your own family and your father, they were all dialed in. They were like listening to that. And he was really dialed in. And he had some comments that sometimes he just blurts out. But at the same time, it's because it made sense to him. And he was really interested in knowing about how your father, his position, and how he got to interview parents or families that wanted that political asylum. And you know, was part of the determining if they got it or not. He kept saying, I don't know if you heard him, but he kept saying, they're not bad people. They're not bad people. Because, you know, we're talking about refugees now with the Syrian refugees.
Right.
That there might be some bad people amongst that group.
Right.
But he just kept saying, they're not bad people. They're not bad people. I thought it was interesting. Because I think he feels like he's being labeled along with that. Not by you, but by society.
Yeah.
Because he's a refugee.
Got
And
it.
now people are talking about the Syrians coming and they're bad people. And I think he feels, I could be wrong. But that's why I mentioned to you about, I think he needs to write some of those thoughts down.
And I still need to think about how to incorporate that with our standards. Because
Yeah.
after you said that to me and I thought about it, I'm like, that's great, Dee. But ELL standards don't say, like, write personal narratives. They don't say, like, talk about your story. I mean, we can do that through the work of these other standards. And we're charged with access to
Absolutely.
core and standards. And so I think finding that place. And, like, with Keytune, some of it is he likes technology a lot. He likes to hang out with the guys. He's usually quite quiet. Like, he's not someone that talks a whole lot. I've seen more of him through Google Forms and through Google Docs and writing that I've seen through discussion.
So, how would it not apply to any standards to have journal writing time at some point? Not every day, but occasionally, that they got to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about, just like free reading.
Yeah,
Because we're trying to improve their writing skills, right, as well as their language skills.
And it's something I've thought about before as a systemic year-long sort of thing. I know Joe Frohwein does upstairs in English. They do an online journal every day. I've struggled to fit that piece in.
And
And I can tell you with Keytune's name story at the very beginning of the year, which was stolen from the ELL conference, about healing traumatic events and getting to know people, he had a very interesting thing to say about his name and how it was chosen for him by his parents and what that means. So,
sometimes in journal writing, students that normally don't speak up get a chance to express themselves because they're afraid to say it the class time. And,
Okay.
and it's another way just to have that connection with them, that you learn stories about them that make you understand why they are the way they are. That was my thought on that.
Sure.
And I just thought, he is kind of trying to be a class clown. And I just thought, listening to his story, because he wants to go back, he says. Listening to his story, maybe that connection piece for you with the future of all his success in writing.
Right.
So that
Well,
that
look
was
at
my
this,
thought
though.
process of
I
it.
think that he almost is a kid that doesn't really need to be in a sheltered ELL class. I mean, maybe he needs in level 4 or just needs more time in his core classes. But he clearly has the understanding or ideas, and his grammar is not
Yeah, it's not there.
typical of
Yeah.
ELL students. It's closer to native. I mean, he's quite capable.
Yeah,
But again, a plural S is not something that,
Yeah.
native speakers don't also mistake.
right. Okay, so anyway, that was my thoughts on it. But I think when you told that story, it really helped them dial into, because you had a personal connection to it as well as them.
Right, and that was on the fly, and I struggled with that, and I thought, do I go here or not go here?
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
ultimately, I want them to always look at text. These are text dependent, and I think when we get students at the high school, especially the intermediate ELLs, they're so used to just, well, I think it's this because one time I went to wherever. Well, where in the text did you get that idea from? And they don't know how to root it in textual evidence. So it's always been sort of my thing is, where's the evidence? Where in the text does it
And-
say?
But they have to have that emotional hook to want to even write about technical
Right,
stuff.
right.
Because, otherwise they're going to say, who really cares about that?
Right.
Who really cares? This doesn't apply to me. And that's the way a lot of high school students are until we make that hook for them and that light bulb turns on. Why in the world would they even want to write about it? I mean, have you ever had to write a paper that you really didn't care about the subject matter at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how students feel often. And so I think that's where I thought this piece was just excellent. And I could see the students when as I walked around, they were reading the articles, they were taking the little quizzes that they were asked. I thought they were really connected to the choices that were on there.
Okay.
And the ones that weren't were the ones that didn't bring the device, had problems with girlfriends, couldn't get in their password,
Right.
and those are things that just happen.
So the language objectives, I think, because we're asking them to read, synthesize, write, highlight key ideas, or make hashtags, we're supported to the extent that students produced work. Maintenance of engagement, again, depends sort of on the student, but I think allowing them choice and not restricting Lexile level or restricting the content aids me in that way. Like if I only had 1 or 2 articles and they really didn't find a connection with them, I probably would have had more behaviors or disengagement. What changes, I told them I would consider adding some articles to the assigned list if they really think that the ones they already have choice of aren't interesting. So like with Key 2, and I said, if you really want to do something on Donald Trump, find me one and I'll go add it to the binder. He hasn't done that yet.
I wondered if you found one.
No, but I'll ask him today.
And it's just, this is timely information, and you know why he's wants to talk about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is very vocal about his views on this whole issue.
Yes. The pacing, I saw your note about speech. That's maybe the one place where I didn't do a great job, but I think as far as minutes and moving through directions, student working, end of the modeling, I think that was okay. I kind of wish we had videotaped the lesson so I could see what exactly you were talking about.
And we can always do that sometime.
I think the speech rate might have picked up when I thought that they already knew what they needed to do, or I realized that we only had 10-15 minutes left of work time, and I really wanted them to get in working, not, oh, well, I can't log in, and we have 5 minutes, so I'll just sit here and do nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like, let's get in and let's work.
Right. Yeah, I always had a tendency to talk fast, especially if it was where you felt like you didn't want to take the work time, just like what you're talking about. And I think there's some students that can keep up with that pace, but there's definitely some students that can't.
Erica was with me, Chalet wasn't, and I know that about those students. I think I make the decision every time to say, does everyone understand again? Okay, quick, this, get started, and then I go check on Chalet, Elvis Soto, the ones I know that maybe missed it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's good. That differentiates them from the students. So. And I'm going to have you go back in and write down what you wrote about the articles because I couldn't.
What I
And back in here, what you were just saying about what changes you would maybe make about
about
the
adding or
articles. Yeah,
changing.
yeah.
Sure.
I'll let you add that. Okay. Okay. And really, let's talk about the pacing of the lesson, not just the pace of that, but also you are giving them several days to complete this. This isn't something that you like gave them 15 minutes. Okay, let's be done now.
No.
So I think when they talk about pacing of the lesson, it's not only how fast we speak, but also how much time are we giving them to work on?
So they had period 3 had the bulk of last week to explore Newsella, read 2 to 3 articles over 5 days, take a little quiz and submit hashtag summaries. Which means if you started on Monday and figured it out, got into an article, worked on a Tuesday, started one Wednesday, showed a class period, finished Thursday, you had half of Thursday and all of Friday, and that gave you 1.5 class periods per article.
I think that should be.
So then when I saw they weren't fabulous last weekend, that's when I said, okay, I can either go to something brand new and try to squeeze this in before Christmas, or take this to the next DOK level. And so I decided to expand summarizing and look at this again, and that's where I brought the hamburger in to work on the writing aspect, not just reading. And so I want you to really go back and revisit these.
Yeah.
And if you don't like your quiz because Newsella only lets you take it once, then change the Lexile level and take it at a different level. Go easier or go harder. I'll put that grade in place.
Yeah.
But I still want you to understand the topic. Give me a summary in hashtag, and then an expanded sentence, which underlyingly I'm asking them to paraphrase and not copy.
Right.
And where I wanted to show you the 2 I did get. I showed you
yeah.
the 2s. Paola, I think, copied a heading or a title twice, but she had her hashtag. So I see that she's thinking, but she's struggling to make a whole sentence. Or what she did, she combined 2 and 3 sentences instead of 1. So I'm going to work with her today
Good.
to try to finish this or redo it. She clearly gets it, but she can't produce it.
So what you need to find out is that does she just not know how to do the sentence structure, or is she not understanding what the article is actually saying?
This tells me she does, because none of these were copied.
Give pledge to improve nothing. I can't hear all of it. Promise to be
I think for her it's a confidence in writing, and what I see in earth sciences, she doesn't like to use English. She speaks only when absolutely needed to or prompted, but she kind of conclaves with like peers and her boyfriend in
Sure.
Spanish all day.
So could she verbally tell you what she's trying to say?
As long as I don't embarrass her.
No, I mean just one-on-one.
Oh yeah, I
yeah.
think she probably could, but she wouldn't be comfortable doing it.
Okay, and then
The
because
production
the
for
oral
her is hard.
because it has to come before she's probably going to be able to write.
So that's where I'm going to say to her, would you tell me this? And she's probably going to say no. And I'm going to show her how I combined it by using which, making it a clause.
Sure.
And say, does that sound like something we might say? And I've noticed with ELLs, they can usually say it, but when you say, okay, stop, rewind, replay, and write it down,
It's hard.
it's hard.
They
So I've
cannot,
had them try to use voice recorder on the Chromebook to say, can you talk to your Chromebook when listening? Well, that's just weird, and I sound weird, my voice is ugly. Yeah, but
No
it's
one
an
else is-
effective tool, so
Yeah.
let's maybe consider that.
Yeah.
And again, on assessment, we don't have speech to text, and I can download that app with them. We
Is-
don't have that, but it's a tool we can use in the meantime.
Are they afraid of doing it at their desk? You think in front of their students, other students? Is there a way you could make a little section in your room where they could kind of quietly pick up their Chromebook and go and?
Possibly, but I think for them, it's still the visual, the nonverbal, that someone sees me going to the area they know is for that purpose.
Well,
What we'd
okay,
have to do
but
is
we'd
wear,
have to
like-
just develop some
We have to wear
comfort with-
language lab, like, headsets
Yeah.
like we will for Alpha 21, but if everyone's using it to listen to music or do their work, then no one would know the difference.
Yeah. How would they know the difference?
So
Yeah.
that's something I'd have to work out on renting them out of the library and planning for that.
Or just developing that climate in the classroom that this is what we can do. No different than picking up the book to read it.
Which I've
Or
worked
opening
on
up
a
the
little
Chromebook.
bit with my IPTP project, but that was during 15-minute free read, and that's been a challenge.
Yeah.
Where I do ask them to record and read with me at the craft table. So some of them have done that a few times, like twice.
Okay.
But
So-
it's not a comfortable practice.
Sure, and then the more it's done, the more that they'll become pretty much.
But I showed you this to say that I think my
I
kids
see.
can do it. I think it's just, again, if we don't make them struggle through it and practice it the way they're going to have to do it later, then we're just not good at it. and I expected that, but that's more the reason why too. I needed time to look at this to know, okay, who needs what, and to not have had that yesterday was a little frustrating. So, but hopefully today.
Writing, they have to be willing to take a risk to write something. Because if they don't write anything, you don't even know where the thought process
Right.
is.
So then, like the competency-based or Miller type grading would be an IW or lack of evidence, i.e.
Lack of evidence,
It's
exactly.
not a missing and complete. It's an insufficient.
Absolutely. Okay. I was just gonna look at these sheets. This sheet of questions from comprehensible input.
Sure.
I'm gonna have you look at it and see if there's a particular question you would like to discuss as we reflect.
I think the two that stand out to me right now
Okay.
are this idea of pauses and natural breaks. Because I think for someone reading, whether it's read aloud or read silently, that depends on their fluency and depends on your rate. And so that's very, very hard to plan or monitor with a group of 20 students. I think when class sizes are a little bit smaller or a little bit more homogeneous, it's a little bit easier to do. I know there's a few students that probably did not give enough of a natural pause, enough of the, what did they say, effective filter or time to process. But I think for others, it's almost a little too long, or that if I waited longer to catch the other ones, I'd start to have kids go off task. And that's that constant balance that it's just like, I know I'm making decisions where I'm losing a few kids, but to keep some other ones without losing more. And that's a hard call as an instructor.
Right, and it changes from day to day for what you're doing. You know.
And kid to kid or absence to absence, you know.
Yeah.
Like Ben yesterday walked out of the library and almost wanted to take an absent and threw an issue with me, went to his case manager. Case manager walked him back and then said, I wouldn't mark him absent if I were you, but if he was being rude, write it as a referral. And that was like, whoa, okay, what? Because I asked you to sit and actually read and not have a conversation in Spanish? Like, okay. And when he came to class, I was grateful he was there, but at the same time, it's like, that's a good choice. Let's celebrate that you're here. But I don't think I was going to get much from him. And he's someone that doesn't need the natural break because he's lived here most of his life. He's just a kid who got stuck and doesn't want to be to work and would rather have the oral proficiency part than having to write it down. And so that's one of the ones where I maybe make that choice. But the second part that leads to is part of what we talked about today with your questions on the reflection form and then this one of how am I going to implement strategies, tools, techniques to clarify concepts, concrete, or directions. And that's why I really think for someone who's having an off day or someone who just, I don't even remember what I did yesterday, I need to maybe grab that Chromebook and visually show them because clearly writing the word New Zealot, putting it in orange, and then putting article in orange isn't clear. It's not connected. But if I grab that Chromebook and I stick it on the document camera and say, it looks like this,
The visual.
and you click here, I think that might help. And for the ones that don't need it, I might just say, if you got it, ignore me.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, eyes up.
And maybe even bring those kids that need that together right up there in front by the screen and, you know, walk through it with them.
The thing is, I'd have to do the document camera at the back, unless
Right.
we put it on one Chromebook, which means I
No,
don't
no,
have
no,
to
that's what I
walk
meant. But they would at least be close to the screen. They're not clear across the room being distracted
Right,
by
right.
everything else between them and the screen.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that sometimes kids who have any type of attention span deficiency, they're just like,
Right.
the Chromebook is great for them, but also it can become a distraction for them.
And that's where my backup was. I said, can I go print one off for you?
Yeah.
Let me print one off for you. And they're like, no, I got it. It's cool. And it's like, what? So you I'm trying to give you a choice. Show me you can handle this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to take it away. So,
Yeah. And you know, the quicker a student who has forgotten their things can get started on something, so that frees you up to help everybody else. And that's the key, because otherwise what happens is that,
I get stuck with them the whole period.
yeah, and because they forgot their stuff.
Yep.
And here's all the other students, you know, that's always just a fine line, I know, as a teacher. How do I direct that student who was irresponsible from not disrupting everybody, but yet give my attention to the students that brought everything and need my help,
Right.
you know? And
So can I quickly have you look at,
Yeah.
peek at what I'm thinking for Monday?
Mhm.
I'm writing 2 versions because I do have IEPs in third hour that are pretty heavy. And I really struggled with which article topic to pick, but I picked this one. There's 2 levels. This one's the easier one, and this one's the slightly where I think they need to be right now, like 700-800 left out, which is not quite there, but it's better than 400-500.
yes.
It's basically about kids needing to move at school and different states or programs that have used pedometers or Fitbits. And so I structured it with some gloss notes, or at least for the easier ones, again, because this is an IEP type student who has chunking concerns or restricted amount. I gave them paragraph count, which is
I
something
see
we
that.
see on Iowa assessments, or we see on Probably Smarter Balanced.
Mhm.
Because one of the questions does say in which paragraph. So that was my way of trying to guide them to that. Here I gave them a note in case they didn't know what a fitness tracker was, and if they haven't noticed in retail stores that Mrs. Musil wears one, if you've noticed.
Mhm.
Structurally on both assignments, I try to think through what do the students need in what order. So it's text, then your summary hashtags, and I gave them like a form, not just a blank space, because I wanted to make sure they know that they need at least 1 to 5 to work the hamburger organizer.
Sure.
Then I'm going to give them the organizer, and I chose not to photocopy that and put it in the middle, only because I did want the quiz questions sort of closer.
Okay.
So that'll be a third
Yeah,
piece
I
on the
see what you're
desk.
saying.
This
Yeah.
will be stapled. And I'm not going to give them the answers. I know that's in the back.
Yeah.
But the questions then I want them to use, one is a comprehension check for me, and 2, maybe that'll trigger you to say, wait a second, that's in a question, that's important. That's not in my hashtag. I need to change these. So that was my thinking, is that it kind of flow this way and then back. So then you go to your hamburger organizer and say, oh, okay. And that was what I did with this.
I think that sounds great. So then that gives them a little bit of a hint
It should.
if they are really reading.
Like I said, this is the one that majority of them look at. This is the
Yeah.
the modified. This one's the majority.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit longer, but I gave them the same structure.
How are the students doing on those quizzes in Newsella?
Depends on their rate. I
Okay.
wish there was a timestamp like there is on the maps testing. When I put them in last weekend, majority were hitting 50%. But there are only 4 questions, so
Yeah.
that's something to bear in mind as well.
Yeah, you missed one and.
Right. But I was hoping that they would get 175s, and more of them were 50s.
Are the questions written at their Lexall level then too?
Yeah, they adjust
Okay.
by the quiz.
Okay.
So if you look at this version versus this version,
That's true. Yeah.
This one is why do scientists think teenagers should get more time to exercise? This one's read the section out and go out and play. What do scientists think students should
Okay.
do?
Sure. So the way you
And again,
structure-
I look through a lot of these when I pick the articles. I like them because they go back to the text.
Yes.
It's not a, what do you think about kids exercising at school? It's
Yes.
a, what does the article say? Or go
Right,
find this
right.
nonfiction text feature, which we've done,
which I
in this
understand.
heading, and find the paragraph that.
Mhm.
So, but do you think this is appropriate as
Oh,
a
absolutely.
formative